Is artificial intelligence going to revolutionize healthcare? Let's find out with today's special guest, Dr. Yohani Solad, on today's episode. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast, where we make AI simple, practical, and accessible for small business owners and leaders. Forget the complicated tech talk or expensive consultants. This is where you'll learn how to implement AI strategies that are easy to understand and can make a big impact for your business. The Artificial Intelligence Podcast is brought to you by Fraction AIO, the trusted partner for AI digital transformation. At Fraction AIO, we help small and medium-sized businesses boost revenue by eliminating time-wasting, non-revenue generating tasks that frustrate your team. With our custom AI bots, tools, and automations, we make it easy to shift your team's focus to the tasks that matter most, driving growth and results. We guide you through a smooth, seamless transition to AI, ensuring you avoid costly mistakes and invest in the tools that truly deliver value. Don't get left behind. Let Fraction AIO help you stay ahead in today's AI-driven world. Learn more and get started at fractionaio.com. Now, I'm really excited to have you here because usually healthcare moves very slowly because there's a lot more red tape because there's so many things that are important, like patient confidentiality, and we require longer studies. And what we've seen is that some companies just jump right into AI super fast. But in healthcare, especially, we have some more protections that kind of require a little bit of a slower transition. So do you think that's a benefit for like hospitals and doctors that they can make a little bit more cautious decisions, or do you think it's going to leave them behind?
Jonathan, thank you for inviting me. Things designed for a reason. And I know we like to blame a lot of healthcare participants in the slow rate of adoption. But in healthcare, we cannot move fast and break things because breaking things here means a lot of negative things. At the same time, there's always a way to move faster, right? So can we move as fast as the front end frameworks? No, we cannot. Can we move faster than the glacier pace we've been using in a lot of industry? Yes. So I think the question is not, is healthcare capable of moving faster? Healthcare and pretty much any innovation you look at is definitely capable of moving faster and putting more efforts in a very targeted discoveries. Very often in the healthcare, especially things you talk about integrating the data, coming with a legal frameworks. It's coming not from inability of a new technology to implement or ideas how to do it safely. It's coming from analysis paralysis, where you're trying too many things and cannot come up with the right things, or frankly, regulatory confusion. The reaction when you don't really know what to do, right? Even if you know how to do it safely, is either not do anything, which is the most common reaction, or something that's actually help us to propel to the current state is design it as a clinical study, something that we can do under an internal board review and do it this way, which is great. It's a great way to create evidence and do the real science. In implementation world, when you have to build previous technology that's been already proven, or maybe technology that may improve your experience and not necessarily make like a clinical impact, a lot of time, this is maybe significant overhead that slow things down.
One thing that's always fascinated me is that in medical field, the buying cycle is often very long. If there's a new machine, whether it's a CAT scan or an MRI, it's often a 3-year cycle between when you first start thinking about it and when it shows up in the hospital. And when I think about all those patients that maybe needed that particular scan during that time, why is the buying cycle so long? And is 3 years accurate, or is that just the government?
Again, if you think 3 years of buying cycles, it's usually shorter, right? If we talk about proven equipment, to be honest, because there is no reason for it to be so long. The government procurement is notoriously slow, but not necessary in years. Think about how many years does it take for this kind of machines to get into the market? Because I think the sourcing and procuring from the proper vendor and registering in the vendor system and selecting the one is one thing, but decades and decades that it take from research and proven machine to actually get in the market. I think that's the real problem, because we always can fix supply chain. if we truly have the need and if people trying to get it, there are ways to do it. For example, even for MRI machine that you cited. Yes, it may take very long for you to actually get one in your hospital. And a lot of this is a combination of you financing, installing, finding the right place to install it, right? Preparing your hospital. But there are ways to address it. You can put external machine to start using it immediately and bring it to your patient if you want. But if a new type of AI-driven technology that's implanted in your cardiac device, for example, trying to enter the market. And right now, for example, there is a not very clear pathway for the non-deterministic generative AI-driven devices. That's maybe a problem. That definitely will make things longer and more complicated.
One of the things that I sometimes think about is you have confidentiality with a lawyer, but if another person's in the room, the confidentiality is broken. You don't have it anymore because there's someone who is not part of the confidentialityness who's there. And when you're having AI in the room, we haven't really figured out where an AI fits on the spectrum. So with HIPAA and with the importance of kind of patient records, and that there's this worry that the AI will remember or will learn from things it's not supposed to listen to, and that even when you promise, all these big companies go, we promise the AI is not listening in these situations. And thank you for your promise. But it's like, I sometimes think about when there's like a court case and they say to the jury, forget that he said that. And it's like, now they're definitely not going to forget that, right? Because it's like the most exciting thing that's happened all day. So you can't, how are you going to make me forget it? It's the first time you started smashing the gavel down and you're saying to forget it. And now I'm thinking about it. It's like when I say, don't think about a pink elephant, always think about a pink elephant. So I just wonder if that's one of the areas that causes hesitation. There's this fear of the incidental HIPAA violation, or kind of this hesitation because it's a learning machine and it changes the dynamic because it listens and remembers everything.
So machine by itself cannot do anything right now. We're still in 2025. I know we are very concerned about Skynet-like technology, but let's get things straight, okay? Our current generation is not sentient. It cannot do anything without humans doing it. I'm not sure what promise truly means. In this case, right? Like you have a legal obligation you need to follow, and you need to have a disclosures that you need to do and actually enforce. So, for example, from the ambient documentation, like the data collection, for example, when the doctor putting a technology in the room, when I'm seeing you as a patient or someone doing it, and this AI tool doing my notes, right? It's helping me to document faster, which, by the way, is a great thing because it's helping so many clinicians not to stay longer at the job and cutting pajama times. The way system implemented, it's used for one particular documentation part, and then as soon as the visit is done, it's removed, right? If I have to reuse it for anything else, for example, model improvement, I need to have explicit agreement, which is not promise. It's a legal agreement with the vendor to actually purge the data. And when I buy it as a software, have to review it. It's actually part of my responsibility as a clinical leader and IT leader to ensure that I understand how my data being collected, reused. Can it go outside of intended use case, even in an anonymized perspective? I think that's probably the biggest fear you verbalize, because unfortunately, we have a lot of instances where vendors may get out of agreements with a healthcare providers or maybe technology company, anonymize the data, and then start reselling this for the outcomes. A lot of things need to stop. And frankly, some of the delay in bringing smaller vendors that may allow you to actually do fast experimentation is related to that exact point. For example, every time I bring a vendor that's new and doing something invasive from a data perspective, I need to ensure that the vendor not just have it in writing, but truly knows what they're talking about. Because it's pretty easy to use ChatGPT or vendor legal templates and say, oh, we're doing all of the above without really doing it, because a lot of us do not have mechanism of auditing every vendor. Like we have to believe in third-party certification, right? That's the beauty of a good certification. Unfortunately, when you talk about the very small vendors, pilot level, a lot of them may not have it yet and say, we're going to do it when we reach a certain point. Those risks are unacceptable for many enterprises, and they never do the pilots. Some other group, especially the one with innovation hubs, going and spending time. But in the core of this is actually outdated legislation that we have right now, because HIPAA was created in a world where we had fax. HIPAA was not created for the web world. HIPAA was not created for the world where we potentially have an incredibly efficient systems that can collect and analyze gigabytes of information a minute and pull from multiple data sources. So we need to rethink a lot of the time. And unfortunately, current model of incentives still incentivize actors to source the data and sell the data. It's true in social media, which is unfortunately following us, right? And I think you've seen a lot of this unfortunate reports where ad networks were following your location even without your explicit permission, which is unacceptable. And similar things happen in some of the tracking, unfortunately, from the healthcare system. Because if I'm not a healthcare entity, if I'm not insured, if I'm not a clinician or practice, I actually don't have to follow it. So if I'm just a random step tracker that's saying, Jonathan, can you please give me access to your health records, right? And Apple or Google Fit, and you give all of that and they pulled your medical information, you're actually not protected by HIPAA. So you don't even have to bring it. They can actually anonymize and do anything they want inside what they describe in their user agreement. And those user agreements usually very, very vague.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's like the patients who are the wildest with their data, where they say things like, I saw there was a campaign on Twitter to upload your x-rays or upload your scans. And I'm sure plenty of people, I know we do this, where we'll get a result from the doctor, an x-ray, and take a picture and have the AI scan it and get feedback. But try not to, certainly not your entire set of medical records, right? So sometimes it really helps to understand something, where you get a prescription. It's like, what does this drug do? What does this drug do? So there can be some usefulness there, but certainly there are people who maybe they do upload their entire record or to a social media platform, which obviously is like the wildest decision you can make. That we see more and more where people, like, they share more and more of their private lives via social media. Like, they want to be an influencer and they share like stuff that you would never talk about, or places you would think are super private. Now they're doing dances, and more private information's in the background of these videos, and the AI can scan everything. So we're starting to get into this world where data is just everywhere. And I'm really fascinated by the thing with 23andMe, right? Everyone gave 23andMe their most intimate data, right? Their genome. And then the board of directors resigned. Their idea of like DNA health never worked, or the research part never worked out yet. And they're running out of money. And if someone else buys all of that data, they could do whatever they want with it, right? Because now it's not even limited by whatever kind of terms of service or conditions or promises that the first company made, because the second company bought it without making any of those promises.
So I'll start with social media first. We live in a free society. As long as I'm informed and I'm adult, I can do anything I want with my data, period. Like, I'm not here to lecture you on what you do. If you want to start publicly uploading your medical data, your sequencing data and everything, God bless you. That's your choice. And there's certain benefit to a lot of that, right? Like co-discoveries, especially for rare diseases or some of the things that's maybe harder to manage, and you're learning from community. So there are certainly no benefit of sharing this information as long as you're informed and it's your conscious decision. I think the biggest challenge is happening where a lot of this happens under the umbrella of safety and protection. I'm going into some app where I expect some degree of privacy, right? Just call some kind of a doctor or maybe some intelligent chat. And instead of just giving me an answer, because understanding of a clinical information is a real thing. So people are seeking a lot of help into all of this. So instead of just answers, I'm getting subpar, maybe incorrect, hallucinated answers, and unfortunately harvested my information. I think that's the real twist. With X, it's interesting part because if you upload your X-ray to X, I don't think you have any expectation of privacy. Like that, to me, that's the first point where like I'm pretty aggressively informed that this is social media. People will use all of it. So as long as you realize that's not everything is coming, please do. And helping us to build bigger multi-model or any kind of AI models is very helpful for the progress of medical technology, right? So if everyone will come up with a good way to publicly or privately, preferably, start sharing information, that will help and get faster to a lot of the outcomes. There is no doubt about that. 23andMe is a very peculiar case, and I want to see where it's will end up, right? Like, I don't think we have a clear answer. Will they sell a lot of this? And will they sell and all of this information will suddenly become available to private equity or something else that's maybe used not only for good, right? But for something that may end up being challenging for people who paid in this, yet to be seen, right? The reality is you do not own your data, even if you paid for that, because a lot of this was subsidized. The agreements change. So if your data retain and if you're not the one controlling your data, you have to be ready that rules may change, cost may change. And then ultimately, so far, the data is still the biggest assets you have, right? And from economic perspective, if that's the biggest assets you have, like what else do you expect? Someone, especially when the company did not have a better way to monetize, will try to monetize their biggest asset. That's as clear as day, no matter what they say, unfortunately. And I don't want to be pessimistic or start alarm bell, but I think this is the reality we'll have to deal with for the next decade, possibly, where until we have a super clear regulation about what you cannot do and start pushing in that direction about your data ownership, retention, and data reuse, which already getting better, to be honest. Still in this dark. So carefully select people, right, and technology and the company you trust. And we were talking in February of 2025, right? So DeepSeek part is and the hype and scare is still here and high. Is maybe the company that's even giving you things for free and claiming we're following particular country law, not other countries' law, not the exactly application. You should trust all of your data, even if it can give you some of the helpful feedback.
Yeah. It's like that saying, if you're playing poker and you don't know who the sucker is, it's probably you. And if it's free, if you think something's free, it's probably not. It just seems like it's free, but there's going to be a surprise at the end. And too good to be true, usually it's too good to be true. I think that it's a really interesting time where I can see why, with so many data things happening, why people are hesitant to jump in, because there are different models all the time. Oh, ChatGPT, that was so last week. You need to be using Claude. No, now it's about DeepSeek. What? DeepSeek is over. It's about DeepMind. And it's very hard to keep up with, even when it's my full-time job. Even when I was reviewing DeepSeek this weekend, there's such a difference between DeepSeek R1 and DeepSeek V3. Completely different models. They sound like they're the same thing. The names are so similar. So I can understand why in the medical field people are hesitant. For the doctors out there and people in the medical field, what do you think is the right approach? What should they be doing as they look to use AI specifically? Because what every doctor really wants to do is give a better experience to their patients, whether it's more accurate diagnoses or a better bedside manner or just a shorter visit. What do you think is the direction to go in, and where's the future going?
Great question. Frankly, we can spend the whole hour talking about just that because we are in such an inflection point where healthcare is poised to change drastically that it's important to actually work and educate on both clinical side and the patient side, because a lot of this progress requires you to rethink the way you deliver care. And one of the core theses of Realign Healthcare, by the way, is identifying the weaknesses we currently have in our incentive structures and the way we deliver healthcare, and ensuring that we address it first before we fully automate. Because there is absolutely no societal or individual care benefits of automated but systemically racist, biased, economically harmful systems, but that's now been powered by AI and being coded by AI. So from a technology perspective, like if you look at technology that's been wildly successful in healthcare, one of this technology that's been around and refused to die is fax. And I would say you take any generation of innovator for the last time, 30 years, they'll say, you know what, we should address the fax problem. Because fax is anything, right? It's not secure. Before it was encrypted and digital fax, right? Or it's flat files, you cannot extract the data. Everything is wrong. But fax is still here. Why? Because it's easy, it's reliable, everyone can figure it out. And a lot of those same things need to apply to technology we bring. EHR's medical records is a great technology for data storing, and you'll find a lot of the benefit and a lot of challenges in the literature. But it's anything but easy. It has a pretty steep learning curve. You need to learn the way, right? The Epic way of doing it, Cerner way of doing it, Meditech way of doing it. And that's limits your benefits while you're transitioning. And that's make a lot of the basic things hard. And that's increase a lot of our administrative overload because you started to curate more of the nodes and then you hire more administrators to do some of this additional parts. And then you put administrator on top of administrators, right? And create this human flow of a technology. And now you have a lot of AI entering the picture that can help you. And now you have to balance excitement of, oh, I have for the first time, I have this incredible technology that can work with unstructured data and sell me all of these things. With the fear that you realize because you work with a model is this is non-deterministic technology. And very often, if you ask the same questions 4 or 5 times, you will get different variation of your answer, like you, depending on your temperature setting, but still, it's not going to be precise. Healthcare like precision. That's why we like facts. That's why we like actually forms with checklists, because very often there is not enough variation, especially when you're talking about particular conditions, right? Or particular pills. So the way you have to start look at that and deploy is to find a scenario where your human feedback, right, where your reinforcement loops are strong enough for you to capture those tails of errors that the system may capture. That's why people started working well with ambient documentation, because ultimately it's working almost like smart intern. It's entering the room with you, right? It's helping not only to listen for your discussion with the patient, but it's also pulling some of the medical records that help you to hand your orders. It's help you to do some of the tasks that's you're going to do, but AI is assisting you. But ultimately, it's your responsibility, and it's expected that you as a clinician will review every single line, every single order, and place it. So from a technology perspective, you may have incredible incentives on, can we just automatically deliver care? How can we start doing this integrated healthcare pods that you're walking in, you're getting a full assessment, AI doing incredible things, and then writing you an order, or you go the full triage and getting a treatment. And there is a reason why, unfortunately, a lot of these companies are not around, right, or bankrupt or restarting once again. Because even though from a side, healthcare may look, oh, what can go wrong? It's actually specialty, right, in the medical field with incredibly long tails. And AI can do relatively well right? Within a few deviation of the norm. But all those tales of patients, of condition, of information, all of those tales with unstructured data that you cannot present well, because AI doing very well in the widget style things are very hard to do with the current generation. I'm not saying it's impossible, right? Like we likely will get progressively better, but we need to ensure that we innovate within few standard deviation of things AI can reliably do well, and do not burn the bridges with regulators, with patient trust, with clinician trust by doing that. Because if we start doing too much too fast, we definitely will have negative outcomes, which lead to more regulation, which slow down innovation.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right that it's that finding that path that's not too fast and we make mistakes and not so slowly get left behind. That's the trick. I really do appreciate your time. I think this is really valuable for people who are, because more and more startups and more things are happening in AI and medical space. And it's one of the places where people, just like when PubMed and WebMD first came out and you could suddenly look up what you have online, people just begin self-diagnosing more and more. And so we do also have to find that area where it stays useful without kind of indulging. Because if you ask in the right way, the AI will say, oh, yeah, you definitely have what you think you have. And it starts to create a cycle. So I think this is really useful to help people have a more methodical approach. What's the best place where people can see what you're working on now, find you online if they want to hear and learn more about your projects and the amazing things that you're doing?
First, please stop by to Realign Healthcare, the podcast that we started in the fall with a few of my colleagues, talking with the industry leaders around the way. We need to realign the incentives in our current healthcare system to help actually lead to better automation. LinkedIn and Twitter, I'm pretty active on both. Please connect, and happy to engage in discussion. And from innovation perspective, John, the healthcare is such a great field for innovation because all of us have personal stories. This possibly is one of those fields where, in contrast to nuclear physics, you will have at some point in your life personal experience, and you will have a strong opinion of what can be the way you schedule your appointment, the way your family member was treated, the way unfortunately maybe you've been treated, or anything else. You will have an experience with that. And what a lot of those tools are doing right now, they are democratizing access not only to the PubMed like information, but to very specific domain knowledge. For example, when 10 years ago, we were working with startups, and the startup will come and say, you know what, I don't really know how to integrate with EHR because I never heard of FHIR, or I never heard of a map mapping, so I don't really know. We would say, yeah, it happens, right? That's a relatively small domain. Right now, there is absolutely no excuse, because if you go and you ask ChatGPT, free one, you don't really need a fancy model, and say, how do I integrate with a healthcare system? Then you say, I want to read blood pressure and write blood pressure. You will get good enough description and file resources. And I think that's part of the power. You don't really have to do a very fancy new bleeding edge decision support innovation medical robotics. But this power of many of democratizing like individual groups and developers with the access to the very specific domain knowledge, and based on infrastructure we already have, at least in the United States. Like you already, based on 21st Century Cures Act, can access your information from your providers, from your insurance. You can request that. You can analyze this and you can build a system around. This part is very powerful.
Amazing. It's got me excited for the future. Thank you so much for being here today for another amazing episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next Monday with more tips and strategies on how to leverage AI to grow your business and achieve better results. In the meantime, if you're curious about how AI can boost your business's revenue, head over to artificialintelligencepod.com/calculator. Use our AI revenue calculator to discover the potential impact AI can have on your bottom line. It's quick, easy, and might just change the way think about your business. While you're there, catch up on past episodes, leave a review, and check out our socials. If you enjoyed this episode, I've got 2 more that I think you're going to love. Click one of these videos to dive into more awesome content, and don't forget to subscribe for even more insights on using AI to grow your business. And I'll see you in the next one.